Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build a brand, grow your business, or pursue your passion. Hello, class. Today we are really returning to my roots in something that should have been a Halloween episode, but things happen. We are talking about a classic, just rise and fall story of a spooky Tumblr blogger. I mean, there really is something about Tumblr, talking about Tumblr, that just really brings me back to a simpler time when I had twinkle lights, a Polaroid camera, and untreated mental illnesses. And it feels like forever since I've really explored Tumblr subculture drama, even though I just made that Larry Stylinson video. But Larry Stylinson was such a huge pop culture moment, even outside of the Tumblr hellscape. It really feels hard to compare what we're talking about today with Larry Stylinson. We are getting much more niche today within specifically the true crime Tumblr blogger community. And that is the story of a certain blog called The Death Merchant. The Death Merchant was a popular true crime blogger who, like many true crime fans of the 2010s, primarily focused on murders and serial killers. Now, if you're not already nervous just from that sentence alone, I should explain that the Tumblr true crime community, or TCC for short, has kind of an infamous reputation for treating horrific people, kind of the worst of the true crime criminals you can think of, as uwu celebrities of their online fandom. Although there are, of course, plenty of people on Tumblr who just have a general interest in true crime and do not support the glamorization of horrific crimes, it seems as though a substantial percentage of the Tumblr true crime community, especially back in the day, was dedicated to glamorizing and even standing some really bad people. And this takes place right around the time My Favorite Murder was the hot new true crime podcast. So even amongst general true crime fans at the time, there wasn't as much of a mainstream concern for ethical true crime consumption, intersectionality, how certain social issues may contribute to crime. So even amongst the general true crime community at that time, and I put myself in that category as well, there seemed to be much more unfettered, uncomplicated, morbid fascination, and all of the moral problems that may arise with that kind of attitude towards true crime. But at least amongst the Tumblr community, which sometimes exhibited just the worst behavior amongst true crime fans, The Death Merchant was actually considered a breath of fresh air because Death Merchant was a much more fact and history-focused true crime blog that specifically spoke out against, worshipping murderers. Yes, it's sad that that was considered a bold hot take at the time, but what can I say? That's Tumblr. Death Merchant also didn't just limit herself to the traditional true crime topics. She also often covered aspects of prison life, from interviewing incarcerated individuals, sharing prison recipes, highlighting lesser-known aspects of prison life, and just general posts detailing the widespread harm caused by the prison industrial complex. The woman who ran the Death Merchant account was named Jessica, and Jessica was also often associated with her best friend Alina, who ran another popular true crime blog called True Crime Hot House. These two had very similar takes and posts against worshipping serial killers, and while yes, I say their takes were a step above the Tumblr true crime norm of the time, that does not mean that all of their takes have aged flawlessly either. For example, Alina once posted, "I really don't have any serial killer tattoos or true crime related tattoos, and I have quite a few tattoos. There was no sarcasm. It's not something I'd ever do. I have an interest in true crime. I enjoy learning about it, but it's not something I condone or endorse. There are no killers I fawn over. If you saw my tattoos, you know there's no place for a serial killer tattoo on me. Jessica White did get a tattoo of Charles Manson, and I think he's the only one that can get away with it. But Charles Manson isn't a serial killer, so." To which Death Merchant replied, "Jessica White can get away with anything." But again, by comparison to other true crime bloggers who were often photoshopping flower crowns onto murderers, Jessica and Alina were seen as the mothers of the true crime community, the tame, ethical approach to true crime content. Which I have to emphasize, even for the time, I find interesting that Jessica was viewed in this way, because Jessica also shared that she had several other Tumblr names before she landed on The Death Merchant, and those were called Murder Mania, Selling Serial Killers, and Killers Are My BFFs. But don't worry, y'all, this is the ethical true crime blog. Jessica, by all accounts, was just a typical millennial by day. Although her education and career were not in any sort of criminology, she had always had a fascination with true crime. So much so that at age 15, she actually began writing letters to various inmates, including some rather infamous people like Richard Ramirez. When Jessica launched the Death Merchant blog, she began posting her various letters and interviews she had with all of these serial killers. In these interviews, she would ask the inmates some hard-hitting questions like, "What is your favorite ice cream?" Yes, that is a question that she regularly asked. She would also occasionally ask what a serial killer's favorite actor was, to which Richard Ramirez answered, Abigail Breslin. Now, what did Abigail Breslin do to deserve that? Perhaps it's because I know how the story ends, but I, for one, am kind of skeptical of some of these interviews, particularly because most of them are just like Tumblr text posts with no way for anyone but Jessica to verify whether these interviews actually happened. Not to say that serial killers can't have stupid answers to questions, I believe that. But some of these really do read like what a millennial Tumblr blogger would think a serial killer would answer these questions. Like, for example, Jessica asked Harrison Graham if he had any hobbies, and he said, "I love to write my own short stories that are rated R or X for mature individuals over 21. Another serial killer said his favorite book was a romance novel called This Time Forever. In an interview with Paul Runge, Jessica asked his stance on the death penalty, and he said, "Damn, Jessica, nothing like channeling your inner Barbara Walters. Lol." I could go on listing all of her interview questions, really, but posting or potentially faking these interviews is unfortunately far from our most pressing ethical concern when it comes to Jessica. When someone on her Tumblr inquired why she asked such shitty questions when interviewing serial killers, she responded, "Why you gotta be so mad? I wanted to keep it fun and lighthearted. Let's see your stellar interviews with serial killers, you dumb anonymous fuck." So there's your answer. That quote, Barbara Walters, actually. But Death Merchant wasn't just a Tumblr blog. Jessica also ran a website called deathmerchant.net, where she sold everything from letters and art made by serial killers to their clothes and their hair. Yes, people apparently want to buy locks of prisoners' hair. Supposedly, Jessica sourced these items and locks of hair from her various pen pal relationships. Also, although I was not able to verify this on the Wayback Machine, several Tumblr users claim that Jessica also assured people who purchased from her website that money would be sent to inmates' commissary funds for their artwork and memorabilia posted on the website. Like I said, I wasn't able to verify this myself, but if I had to guess, I do think it is still possible, and Jessica may have just said this in one of her Tumblr submissions and not on the website itself. And there's actually a fairly good reason why that wouldn't be posted directly on her website, even if that was something she was advertising to her fan base. This is because if Jessica did advertise that money was being sent to serial killers in exchange for their artwork or their letters being sold on their website, she would potentially be putting herself at legal risk because of the various Son of Sam laws, which exist in nearly every US state. Law time, everyone. Law time, I gotta use that degree. The original Son of Sam law was first passed in the state of New York and aimed to prevent convicted criminals from profiting from their crimes. Under the original New York law, any profits obtained from work describing a crime were required to be withheld from that prisoner and made available to the victims or the families of victims. And in theory, that sounds like a pretty reasonable law. You shouldn't be getting rich off of the most horrific things you could have possibly done. But these laws have been historically controversial, raising both First and Eighth Amendment concerns. And in fact, that original New York law was ruled as unconstitutional by the US Supreme Court in 1991. The court explained that the law was over-inclusive because it applied to any work that expressed the author's thoughts or recollections about a crime, whether accused or convicted. This means, in theory, this would also limit the publication of Malcolm X's autobiography, or even the Confessions of St. Augustine. Because free speech is considered a fundamental right in the United States, states have to narrowly tailor their laws to target the very specific type of speech, and since this original law was way too broad as it was, the Supreme Court struck it down and told New York to basically rewrite the law in a more limited and specific form. But even though that original law was ruled unconstitutional, many similar laws do still exist to this day, and most of these laws have not been challenged in the court system. New York did actually revise the law, and it now required that the victim only be notified if a person convicted of a crime received more than $10,000 from any source, and it also imposed a statute of limitations for victims to claim the money in court. But at least in my opinion, in practical effect, these modified laws basically function the same as they did prior to the SCOTUS decision. And the reason these things often go unchallenged is because it's not politically popular to advocate for the free speech rights of people who did really horrific, unspeakable things. But this gets even more complicated with the rise of e-commerce, because now there are even more questions as to how and if these laws apply. For example, if a serial killer sells their Sonic/fiction art through a third-party seller, it's a real gray area as to whether these sort of Son of Sam laws apply. On one hand, this serial killer could argue that this art has nothing to do with the crimes they were accused of. They're just really into Sonic, and people generally have a right to make and sell art. But also, would anybody be interested in this drawing if it wasn't made by someone who committed a notorious crime? That's why a lot of victim rights organizations lobby for and help pass laws which further restrict a prisoner's ability to sell their art or personal items. And individual prisons usually also have rules which prevent prisoners from mailing out items that they know will later be sold. I couldn't really find any hard data on this, but from what I've found, it seems as though a lot of the art done by serial killers that you'll see for sale or other murderabilia is oftentimes not put up for sale with the consent or even knowledge of most of these prisoners. According to William Harder, who runs the website Murder Auction, most of the art being peddled at these sites were never created for sale at all. A lot of these dealers write to inmates posing as a girl. They gain their trust, and then when the prisoner sends them the artwork, thinking it's a gift for a woman who's interested in them, they turn around and sell the stuff online. Harder actually had several angry letters from mass murderers written to dealers, not him, he says, after discovering the scam. Perhaps put a pin in that. Also, because of the shady way a lot of this murderabilia is acquired and passed around from person to person, it is often very hard to verify the authenticity of these things, especially if the memorabilia is from a lesser-known prisoner. So fake murderabilia is also a huge issue within this niche. Now, this is clearly a very nuanced issue that requires a careful balance of considering a prisoner's individual autonomy and ability to participate in late-stage capitalism with the very real trauma endured by the victims of these crimes, who do not want or need to see an economy built around the crime that either ended or destroyed their lives. Did Jessica consider this complicated ethical dilemma? Well, when asked whether she considered victims when choosing to start a business selling murderabilia, Jessica said, "I'm not really thinking about the victims. We don't go out of our way to advertise our website. It's for certain people who are looking for the kind of things we sell." She said, "We're not out to hurt feelings, but feelings do get hurt." Okay, I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, but I just want to remind you all that Death Merchant was considered one of the good ones. The bar is absolutely in hell. But of course, we haven't even gotten to the juiciest part of the Death Merchant's blog. The thing that truly made her the true crime blog to rule all true crime blogs. And that, of course, was her marriage to Bobby Ray Gilbert. Bobby Ray Gilbert was an Alabama inmate who, at the time, was serving 3 life sentences for crimes committed both inside and outside of prison. Bobby was most well known for being featured in the TV series Lock Up. This clip of him circulated everywhere, and it's hard to say exactly why, except, for lack of better words, people found Bobby to be charming, intriguing. Although he wasn't a household name the way other notorious true crime figures might be, he was certainly well known enough within the niche of the true crime community that researched this whole world. Around 2014, Jessica began posting about her romantic relationship with Bobby, from dating to eventually getting married. And this was not a subtle part of her blog. In fact, in her about information, her relationship with Bobby was consistently the first thing listed. One of these things is not like the other. Even though Jessica initially ran her blog as part advertisement for her memorabilia website and part informational true crime content, she would often respond to questions about Bobby and her relationship. I ended up saving a lot of these posts, and this was the best that I could narrow down. Let's read some together, shall we? How long did it take for you and your man to admit romantic feelings to each other? I have fallen head over heels in love with someone I've written for a little over a year now, and judging by the content of his letters, I get the feeling that this is mutual, but I'm still so apprehensive to say how much I love him. Ugh. I don't recall. The feelings were there immediately, but we couldn't do or say anything about it out of respect for others, I guess. But that didn't last too long. I would say 2 months. I remember watching your husband on Lock Up. I thought he was so handsome. You're very lucky. When will he be out? It was more than a year ago, so I don't remember, but Why is he in there again? Did all of his handsomeness get in the way of you paying attention to his story? Lol. He's in there till he escapes. And for murder. Bobby looks like a sexy shark. I've had a lot of people say sexy tiger on here. Shark is a new one. I don't know what it means, but I'm lolling. Bobby and I were talking about octopuses the other day because he knows all these weird facts about them. And I read him the post about them that I reblogged from Congenital Disease and was like, so did you know that? And he said, yeah, I did. And I'm like, I can't teach you anything. How the fuck did you know so much about octopuses? And he said in the most serious, annoyed voice ever, because Jessica, I used to be one. When you mail your man some sexy pictures showing your cute new bra, and he sends you a letter telling you look like a 12-year-old Dolly Parton failing. And of course, not everyone was immediately shipping Jessica with Bobby either. Even though Jessica claimed her morbid fascination with true crime was totally separate from her marriage to a murderer, you can't deny it's at least a little suspicious. See, the funny thing is, you're not even hiding it. You're just openly romanticizing a murderer. And you even admit he is, but you're cool with it. But you're not a true crime blog. And that's not a true crime hobby, really. It's a true crime fetish, at most. And I'd argue that gives true crime a bad name. Nah, you're just a terrible person. Like a literally terrible person. As in someone who I wouldn't trust to be in the same room with you. You are the reason I carry a gun. You poor thing, let me break it down. I'm not romanticizing my relationship. It just is what it is. I'm not going to deny that he killed people. He killed people. But I am a true crime blog, and that is my hobby. Where is the fetish? My marriage is a fetish? You carry a gun? Why is that even important to bring up? Are you a murderer? How does it not make you uncomfortable knowing your husband is in prison for such an awful conviction? I don't think I could ever be with a murderer. I don't know, I guess I'm just not a judgmental asshole. Do you mean you'd never be with a man who would take matters into his own hands if someone tried to rob him? The difference between the kind of guy you'd be with and I would be with is mine wouldn't need any help if such a thing were to occur, and your hypothetical husband would be on the phone calling 911. If I didn't marry someone who couldn't take care of himself and his family and relied on the police, I'd be very uncomfortable. But I don't care what you'd prefer in a spouse, and frankly, you shouldn't give a fuck what I prefer. It's not any of your business. Despite all this controversy, she continued to frequently post about her loving relationship with Bobby and sell his clothes, letters, and artwork on her website. And yes, people bought these things. She also created a Tumblr blog for him in which she would basically post the same stuff she posted on her normal blog, except this time it was on behalf of Bobby, who of course was a huge Tumblr fan. Now, I'm sure many of you sassy detectives out there have already worked out based on the title of this video and the general depravity of the story that everything is perhaps not what it seems here. And to that I answer, all right, fine. You got me. Shall I reveal how all of this came tumbling down? Yes. Okay. You see, everything was great until in 2018, suddenly a blog appeared called notdonebyaLongshot.tumblr.com. This blog claimed to be written by Bobby Gilbert himself and run by one of his friends on the outside. And this blog came forward with some shocking revelations. Warning, this is long, but it's juicy. My brothers and sisters, I have spent my entire life locked inside of a box. I've watched other men die for as little as failing to say excuse me after accidentally bumping into someone in chow line. I've seen other men kill each other over words, rumors, lies, or even one's facial expression. I'm sure most of you can say the same thing. In our world, life holds very little value, and death is the only thing that's free. If you have ever been incarcerated for any length of time, then I'm sure, like me, you believe you've seen everything there is to see where duplicity is concerned. You haven't. Not yet you haven't. Just when I thought I encountered every dime store con game or bullshit hustle ever invented, along came two of the most devious, conniving, shyster-ass bitches I've ever seen. As consummate a liar as even the most seasoned of con artists, as calculating as any predator, and as skilled an actor as any Hollywood starlet. I'm a skeptical person by nature, and over the years I've developed a habit of always looking for a hidden agenda. But believe me when I tell you that these two charlatans schooled my ass as if I had just gotten off the bus. The game they bring to the table is something most of us would never suspect. I mean, after all, what do we have that anyone would wish to trick us out of it? Why would anyone want to go to so much trouble trying to convince us they are someone other than who they say they are? And yet, that is exactly what these two chameleons do so well. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but there is an entire subculture outside our walls devoted to exploiting convicts. I must admit that I had no idea these people existed until I had the grand misfortune of becoming one of their targets. Odds are, if you have been convicted of a high-profile crime, or received a lot of media exposure, you are also a prime target for these people. Hell, you may already be corresponding with one of them and don't even know it. You may even believe you're in a trusted relationship with one of them. Hopefully this little newsletter will change that. Make no mistake, my friend, these people do not give a rat's ass about you. The only thing their letters are good for is wiping one's ass with them, assuming you can avoid the paper cuts. Now, if I were in a position in reading this letter from your perspective, I'm sure my first thought would be it sounds like it was written by some poor schmuck who got his feelings hurt. It would be a perfectly natural assumption and not altogether invalid. No one likes having to admit they got played like a banjo, but my wounded pride notwithstanding, I am writing this letter to expose these fraudulent... because I still believe in honor among thieves, and also because I hate a fucking double standard. Think about it for a minute, friend. How many times have you gone hungry or done without something instead of asking someone on the outside for a helping hand? Because you already know that if you do ask, that you're just another fucking con artist using people. If you have a girlfriend on the outside who tries to help out from time to time, she'll be informed by everyone around her that you're just after her money. It can't possibly be that you actually care about her as a person, that you adore her personality and love her sense of humor. It's not because you respect and admire her intelligence, or that her kind and gentle spirit is the only thing helping you cling to your own battered humanity, and they will never in life be able to understand that every minute you spend with her is an hour you get to feel like you actually matter to someone else. And that's the one thing they will never be able to place a value on. No, it's always about you being a con, out to use someone else. No matter how sincere you are or how earnest your love may be, it will never be recognized in the same spirit as it's given. And yet they toy with our emotions and view us as nothing more than zoo animals, dangerous pets, or merely sources of amusement, even exploit us for their own financial gain. And there will be not a word uttered in our defense, nor a single voice raised on our behalf. If anything, they will say we deserve it. We had it coming. After all, we are nothing more than lowly convicts, and our feelings count for nothing. They call themselves death merchant, and they have turned the exploitation of prisoners into an art form. There has always been rules of engagement for any battle. Even world wars have rules governing the treatment of prisoners. But when it comes to exploiting us, this group of people have no rules. There is nothing they won't do. No level to which they will not stoop in order to get what they want from certain convicts. From pretending to be news reporters, priests, lawyers, etc., to switching genders the way one changes socks. And in some cases, they will even work in tandem, one setting the stage for the other to take advantage of us. What are they after? Anything they can get from you. Be it artwork, tracings of your hands, photos, legal work, your clothes, anything. They will even ask you for your hair, and they sell it on their twisted little website for unbelievable amounts of money. Some of the names she has written inmates under is Jessica Geen, or Gilbert, or Jessie Miller whenever she's pretending to be a guy. But chances are, now that they have been exposed, it is safe to assume that they will have switched tactics and found them some new photographs or some other unsuspecting females they can impersonate. So just be leery of any correspondence you may receive from the state of Indiana or the state of New York. Send guys a tracing of their hand and invite him to place his hand in theirs, knowing that most guys will do exactly as they hope and send a tracing of his hand back to them, and it will go straight up on their website for sale, along with the letters. If you make the mistake of placing your trust in either of these women, you will think that she actually gives a shit about you. She will use that against you in the most brutal of fashions. She will have you call her, which she certainly will record, and use it against you if at all possible. She will offer to call your family for you, and then con them out of your childhood photos under the pretense of writing a book, when all she wants to do is sell them on her website. She will promise to come see you, make elaborate plans to move closer to you, talk about wanting to marry you, all the while being engaged to 3 other guys and a couple of females, and telling them all the same shit she's telling you. Love and trust and loyalty are nothing but words they use as tools of their trade, deceit. They have no fucking concept of what those words actually mean. When all of her lies have ran their course and there's no more room for her to wiggle and lie out of other shit that you caught her in, she will vanish on you without so much as a fuck you very much. If someone had not informed me of what she had on her Tumblr page, hell, I guess I still would not have been aware that she had dumped me and moved on to another victim, cause she certainly didn't even have the fucking decency to inform me. Once she dumps you and moves on to her newly selected victim, she will inform him what a horrible person you were, and how jealous you were of all the men who flirted with her. And every chance she gets, she will tell someone what a piece of shit you were and how horribly you treated her, when the truth is, you will have never laid eyes on that in person. So my brothers, be aware. They are out there and they don't play. Take nothing at face value, and don't trust a single fucking letter that comes out of Indiana or New York. Because I'm here to tell you, if you are any kind of high-profile convict, odds are it's just a matter of time till this tries to trick you out of something. Yes, according to this Tumblr account, Jessica and her best friend Alina ran their businesses by catfishing serial killers with images of a random blonde woman in order to sell their true crime memorabilia to the highest bidder. Since Jessica and Bobby had apparently not met in person, it was also implied that even though they were romantically involved, they were never actually married. And that was not all. Other accounts came forward claiming that although Jessica had promised a percentage of her true crime proceeds would either go to charities or to the inmates' commissary funds directly, there was allegedly no record of these inmates or charities receiving any of these promised funds. Shortly after these posts surfaced, both Jessica and Bobby deleted their blogs. This means that Jessica's bestie, Alina, was the only blogger left in this situation who could potentially address these shocking claims. And did she? Not really. Hey, is it true that you've been exploiting prisoners for fame and money? No, but actually thanks for asking. Feel free to ask me more if you'd like. It's not true. If anyone thinks what I'm doing is lucrative and for personal gain, I've actually spent a lot of my own money on inmates. Not just one of them, but some have kids and money goes to them. I don't really make any profit at all. Deathmerchant.net is down for temporary maintenance and no other reason. It kept saying items were in stock when they weren't. Obviously, that can't happen. I hope everyone understands and it'll be back up and running soon. Thanks all. But even Alina went on to quietly delete her blog a few months later. With no apology or explanation from anyone, the Tumblr true crime community could only speculate as to what happened and where their two true crime mothers had gone. Really sucks that the death merchant is gone. She had just started following me. I honestly don't care that she sent inmates fake pictures. I don't see what the big deal is. Other than the girl in the pictures. I feel bad for her. And so this is how the story ends for most people, but not for me. I, for one, upon initially reading the story, still had a lot of questions. For one, how did Bobby Gilbert manage to find out Jessica's scheme, her real face, and who posted this lengthy expose on Tumblr on his behalf? Was any of Bobby and Jessica's relationship real? Were Bobby's accusations even true? Was this Bobby writing this post? Although I wish I could say I had the answers to all of these questions, I can say I was at least able to find some interesting scraps of information. And unfortunately, these bits I found only complicate this picture more. But before we continue, a brief word about today's sponsor, Squarespace. As many of y'all know, I have recently been blessed with the opportunity to launch the website picturesofgoose.squarespace.com. Squarespace has countless beautiful templates that you can pick from, all to suit your needs. And with this feature, I was able to put in just some beautiful pictures of Goose. I told you, this website's about Goose. And this process could not have been easier. Thanks to Squarespace's asset library, I was able to upload everything I needed on one central hub and use it all throughout my website. With Squarespace's Fluid Engine design system, you're able to take these pre-made templates, which already look great, and then totally customize them to suit your brand. You really can customize every detail with their reimagined drag and drop technology, which works for desktop or mobile. So for example, not only did I have these beautiful pictures of Goose, I was also able to put in some real life testimonials from real 100% real people who interacted with Goose. So whether you're running a business, you want to start a blog, or you too want to launch a website with just pictures of Goose, Squarespace is the place to do it. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Ashley Norton for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. I mentioned earlier I was suspicious as to whether Jessica really interviewed serial killers. Well, with what I've found, I also suspected that Jessica may not have ever known Bobby at all. I go back and forth on this because it does look like she posted audio interviews with Bobby at one point, but none of them were playable on the Wayback Machine, so I wasn't able to verify whether these recordings sounded authentic or if they were edited. However, when looking through her blog on the Wayback Machine, I found a very interesting post from 2015. You probably get this question all the time, but I can't find the answer anywhere directly, or maybe I'm just not good at looking. But I've been following you for a while and might as well ask, are you actually married, dating, whatever, to Bobby in a mutual relationship way? Or in like a figurative, I like this topic/person so much you could say I'm married to it kind of way? Like how people might call a celebrity character they really like their husband or wife. I'm just a fangirl. He has no idea I even exist. I'm sorry, what? This was one of her biggest claims to Tumblr fame, and it was just a joke? In a post just under 2 years later, she would answer and ask in all sincerity, claiming she and Bobby had been in a real romantic relationship for 5 years. Even though there was this one post in 2015, most people who followed Death Merchant actually thought that her and Bobby were in a real relationship. Is it possible that this started out as some sort of fan fiction for her and it spun out of control and she just stopped correcting people who presumed she actually was dating Bobby? But if that's true, why would she delete her blog with no explanation when Bobby made a post exposing her? It still doesn't make sense, so I decided to dig even deeper. I found another very interesting post where she shows some of the mail and artwork she had received from Bobby. You'll first notice on this envelope there's some very weird pixelation around Bobby's name, almost as if his handwriting had been photoshopped onto this image. Also, her choice to scan the envelope instead of just taking a picture of it, I think is noteworthy in itself. I also looked through some of the art shown that she said that she had gotten from Bobby and noticed the art style was very inconsistent from picture to picture, which is actually something she previously identified as a sign murderabilia might be fake. So I did some reverse image searching and I was able to find at least a few of these Gilbert originals posted by an entirely different artist in 2011. Is it possible that Bobby himself was copying other art? Sure, I suppose, but Bobby had much more limited access, if any access, to the internet. So how would he even find these reference photos to copy? I don't have any proof suggesting this, but to me, it seems like Jessica was the one who had more of an opportunity to potentially fake Bobby's artwork. Of course, just a theory, a murderabilia theory, but this isn't even where the mystery ends. I also found a blog from 2010 called tracyhatesnake.blogspot.com. For context, Snake was Bobby Gilbert's nickname in prison. The post said, Bobby Gilbert from MSNBC's Lockup Pullman Extended Stay is a liar. He uses a woman who write fan mail to him to con money from them. I know because he conned me. For 7 weeks, that son of a bitch lied to me, and I fell for it. The comments on this post were filled with other women who claimed that they had also been tricked into sending money and explicit photos to Bobby. Really, what is happening? But I'm not done. You may have also noticed that in Bobby's call-out post of Jessica, he said that Jessica sometimes went under the name Jessica Geen. If you search the name Jessica Geen, you'll also find the name Eric Geen. Eric Geen, or Eric Holler, runs another murderabilia website called Serial Killer Inc. Yes, he did change his name online as a reference to the famous serial killer Ed Gein. In articles about Serial Killers Inc., you'll often see Jessica and Eric presented as husband and wife. Although interestingly, Eric and the business ran out of Jacksonville, Florida, and as far as I could find, Jessica had only ever lived in Indiana. I sort of withheld some information earlier for dramatic effect. Bobby was not the only one to make an expose post on Tumblr about Jessica. No, there was another post which you can still find today, which was posted by another blogger who, as far as I can tell, is anonymous, and contained very similar information to Bobby's Tumblr post, except this post also claimed that Jessica had previously catfished Eric, the man who ran the Murderabilia website, and had refused to meet him in person, which is perhaps why she had so many rebrands of her earlier Tumblr blogs. Those earlier blogs made explicit references to the Serial Killers Inc. website and supposedly also detailed her long-distance relationship with Eric. But don't go anywhere, I'm still not done. Finally, I found a very interesting article posted by a Louisiana reporter in 2012, and this article is juicy. Remember earlier how I said that Jessica promised Tumblr users that money from the artwork would go directly to prisoners? In 2012, Jessica actually claimed just the opposite. On Serial Killers Inc., the website expressly stated that none of the criminals featured on their website would receive profits from the art sold. One day, a letter and drawing from serial killer Derek Lee is posted on the website. At the time, Lee said that he had no idea that anything he was mailing out was going to be put up for sale, but he had been recently talking to Jessica Geen and had just sent her pieces of artwork. In a phone interview with this journalist, Jessica denies having any direct correspondence with Lee or sending any money to prisoners. However, records indicated Jessica had paid various serial killers over $700 in the span of 2 years, including $20 to Derek Lee. The warden of the prison said, "It looks like the website scammed him. They're horrible people. He was being nice because she was flirty. He didn't have a clue they were going to be sold. This is appalling to us because we have to think of the victims. Victims trump in our business." According to the prison head of investigations, Jessica had sent Lee a letter and pictures of herself as a blonde woman hoping to establish a pen-pal relationship. A portion of Jessica's letter read, "I'm sorry to hear about you not being able to send pictures. Some people have to ruin it for everyone, I guess. I'm glad you took the time to write me back. I like some of your art you speak about. Thanks for letting me know that you can accept JPay. I sent $20 to your account." So regardless of how true Bobby Gilbert's allegations may be, according to this article publicly available in 2012, Jessica had already been caught catfishing and scamming prisoners, and she was still able to amass a loyal Tumblr fan base who viewed her as the moral compass of the true crime community. And I do find it very interesting that to her Tumblr audience, Jessica was supposedly able to claim she was sending the funds directly to infamous artists, whereas in years prior, she had denied establishing any monetary or romantic relationships with any of these people. And I think that, if anything, just goes to show how different the Tumblr true crime community is from even the broader true crime and memorabilia fandom itself. To me, it all feels so emblematic of the larger problems with true crime when it fails to consider the humanity of the perpetrators and, more importantly, the humanity of the victims. How can people expect to grieve and actually learn from these horrific things that happen if morbid fascination and greed are so central above anything else? Although we'll likely never know the true extent of Jessica and Alina's wrongdoings in this situation, I don't think they were ever the disgraced fallen heroes that they were sort of put up to be by some of the Tumblr true crime community. And again, this is not to demonize people on Tumblr who have an interest in true crime. And even within this fascination, I understand that a lot of these people were very young and maybe did not have the empathy or maturity needed to have an interest in some of these horrific things. But this is certainly a story that could only have happened on 2010's Tumblr. And that is all I have for today. Folks, I think as I'm filming this, I'm like about to hit 100,000 subscribers today. I know the Larry Stylinson video was like my early celebration of 100K because I like grossly miscalculated when that would happen. But I just wanted to say again to y'all that I'm so grateful that this is a thing I get to do and share with y'all. Not a lot of people get to have their childhood dream job as their full-time thing, and I do, and I'm so grateful for that, and I'm so excited for what's to come with this channel, so just thank you. I'll keep my corniness to a minimum and I'll wrap it up there. If you enjoyed this and you want to see more content from me, I upload a monthly bonus video on my Patreon. I'm also streaming on Twitch and re-uploading those VODs on my second channel if you want to look at that, or if you don't want to do any of those things, you can always just like, comment, subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye!